We're in the bottom of Kuf Beis on Beis 102b. Bo Minei Me Rabbi Yanai. Okay. Okay, we're continuing the laws of sort of real estate transactions. What's normal? Continue a little bit through the end of the parak, and then we'll switch over. Bo Minei Rabbi Yanai. I had a question from Rabbi Yanai. Soicher Omer Nesati, Umasker Omer Lo Natalti. This obviously is a classical debate. The renter says I already paid, and the landlord says I never got the rent. Who has to bring the proof? So the Gemara says, Amos, what time frame are we talking about? If it's within the rental period, within the month, Tanina, we have a brisa that teaches. If it's after the time period, also Tanina, we also have a brisa. It's now we learned. Okay, so you have a young infant. He's a firstborn. He's a bechor. So the rule is that you have to. There's a mitzvah of a pinyin ben. You have to be paid to him. You have to redeem him. You give 5 coins to the kohen. So now, if he dies within 30, let's say the father dies within the 30 days. Now, typically the event called the pinyin ben is the redemption is done on the 30th day. If the father dies before 30 days, we presume the father did not complete his obligation. If it was after 30 days, we presume the father did do the obligation. So very similarly, if you owe rent, rent is due on the first. So if the guy makes the claim that he paid before the first, he shouldn't be believed. And if he makes the claim that he paid after the first, he should be believed. If the father dies within 30 days, he can presume he was not redeemed, unless there's evidence that he can prove that he was redeemed. After 30 days, the presumption is that he was redeemed, unless people tell him that he was not redeemed. Okay, so similarly, we should apply the same principle. Before the time the rent is due, the renter is not believed. After time is due, the renter should be believed. So the question is, it's on the first day of the month. Is he always paying like at the end of the grace period, or can we presume that already at the first day of the month he's paid the rent? We learned Sachir, a renter, a worker. He's paid by the job. He's paid by the hour. If on the day that he finishes the job, he makes an oath that he was not paid, that he's one of the few people that's an exception to the rule. He makes an oath and he collects. Generally speaking, the rule is you make an oath and you don't pay. The reason why we trust the renter is because the owner, the employer, is always busy, so therefore doesn't remember as well. Okay. The rabbis trusted the worker because it is more likely that the landlord made a mistake by paying a different worker than that the worker would make a mistake when he didn't receive the money. And when he did receive the money, and he would say he didn't receive it. Therefore, we trust him with an oath to be able to make an oath and collect. But over here, the renter, all he does, 1 second. Yeah. Okay. So over here, because the renter is making an oath that he's already paid, so he's in the category of the regular oath that who makes an oath that he's already paid. Typical oath is to make an oath and it be exempt from payment. Over here, the renter is making an oath that he paid rent and therefore he's exempt from payment. A fellow rented a long-term lease for 10 years. Because of Ishtar, they wrote a document. If Amrlay at some point in time, he says to the guy, and he this Chamashonim. The problem was they didn't write an exact date of when the lease started and ended. So at some point, the guy says, I've already been living here for 5 years. Now, Allah is mehemen, he's believed. Okay, meaning that we have a debate here between the renter and the owner. The renter says he's only living there for 3 years. And he has 7 years left. The landlord says, no, I rented it to you for 10 years. So far, it's 5 years, and you only have 5 years left. The landlord is believed. Okay, meaning that if somebody lends his friend money and his friend says, I paid you back half, do we say that his friend is believed? The answer is no, he has to make a shuvos mitzvahs. And he says paid back half. So okay, so over here also, why isn't the landlord in the category of making a shvua? There's no comparison. A document for collection is meant to be used to collect. And therefore, if you make the claim that you paid back half, you have to have evidence to back that claim, because obviously the direction of the document is in that it is for collection. So either you have to prove that you paid, or you have to prove that you sort of nullified the document halfway. You wrote in the document, you attach a receipt to the bottom of the document. So underneath the signatures, you write something like, and half of it was paid on a date, and you sign it. However, over here, the reason why there's a document for 10 years is not because it's a collection document. It's not a collection document. What it is to make sure the guy doesn't claim it's his own. So you'll get to it more in Bava Basra. That's the kind that we spoke about a little bit in Bava Metzia and Bava Kamma. The concept is called Cheskes Gimel Shana. Before the title companies came around, if you lived in a property for 3 years, then we presume that the property was yours. Living meaning using the property like the normal way that it's used, except if there's a document that undermines you living there. In this case, the document says you're renting it for 10 years. So that would undermine any claim that the lessor might have, but tried to claim it as his own. Okay, and therefore there's no need here because it's not a collection document. There's no need to write a receipt or anything else. And the landlord maintains ownership of the property. Because he maintains ownership, the landlord is believed. Rav Nachman says, "Shoel adam b'tuvei la'olam." Okay, this is a common practice between friends, where you borrow something from your friend, as long as the item is useful. It's sort of a very long-term loan without any endpoint. Okay. So this is a permitted type of loan, and you can basically get to keep it forever until it breaks, and then you have to give them back whatever's left. Amar of Mari brought about Shmuel. So Mari, the son of the daughter of Shmuel, the granddaughter of Shmuel, he said, they have to make a kinyan specifying this loan is sort of an indeterminate length. Amr of Mari Bridger of Ashi, so Mari, the son of Rav Ashi, explains, if you borrow an axe and you give him back the handle, meaning you give him back whatever's left after it breaks. Amr Rava says, a fellow says to his friend, Ushlan Mora, I want to borrow a shovel to sow, to dig a specific orchard. Ravi Be'ahu Pardesa. 1 second. The shovel loan is valid for the length of time it takes to dig that specific orchard. Let's say he says Pardesa. He doesn't specify which orchard. He says he wants to dig his orchard. So Ravi Bey call Pardesa the boy. He can dig. He can use it to dig all the orchards in the world. There's no limitation on it. If he says to him, Pardisi, my orchard, so Rav will call Pardisi. He can dig all of his orchards, the isla that he has. And at the end of the loan, he has to give him back the handle if the item breaks. Amr Papa, Haimand Amr Chafri, Ushlan Hai Gargusa. A fellow wants to borrow a well to be able to carry the water to water his fields. So he says to him, Hagagusa, I want to borrow this well. Benafla, and the well fell in, and now you can't collect the water from the inside of the well. Loy bonila. The owner is not obligated to rebuild it because he said specifically this well no longer exists, so you don't get anything. Let's say he says Gargusa Vinafla. 1 second. If his friend says he wants to borrow a well and the well falls in, so he's obligated to rebuild a well or provide him with a new well to be able to dig water from, to be able to pull water from. Let's say he tells him Bei Gargusa. He asks him for a place to dig a well. So then, Kariv also Kamma Ragusi Bari. Adam Isrami Levitzarach Lamiknimine. He can if he borrows from his friend a place to dig a well, so then he can start digging as many wells as he needs, until the point where he finds the well that's suitable to be able to draw water from. And Vitzarach Lamiknimine, all these require a kinyan. The loan itself is the words alone are not sufficient to create such a loan. Okay, Mishnah. Somebody rents property to his friend, the nofal, and the property falls down. The house falls down. He has to give him a new house. He rented a house after the house fell. He has to give him a new house. If the house was big, he can't give him a big house. If it was gadol, if it was a big house, you can't give him a small house. Echad, if it was one house, you can't give him two. If it was 2 rooms, you can't give him 1. You can't give him less windows. You can't give him more windows. Only if they both agree. So the Gemara says, what's the scenario? Either let's say he rents from him this specific house, and not all the house falls down. So Azaleh, there is no this house anymore. This house is gone. If he told him a house, I'm renting you a house. Why can't he turn it? Why can't he take the house that fell and turn it into 2 houses? If it's a small house, why can't he make it bigger? So Amar Shlagish to Amar Lei Bias Shnimatz B'Chamidus Arka Kach V'Kach. So he rented. Not only did he rent the house, but he rented a house of a specific dimension. He rented 1,000 square foot house. So if you make it bigger, it's not what he wanted. But if that's the case, he rented a specific size. Obviously, you have to give him that size. He they looked at the house, and the guy says, "I want to rent this type of house." So he gave him that house. Now it fell down. You have to give him the same type of house. So obviously, you have to give him the same type of house. So the house was next to a river. I would think Micah said the maybe what he mean when he said I like this type of house, he meant the type of house that's near a river, and not the type of house, this type of house that's this specific size and this specific layout. Mashmalon that no, this type of house includes not only the river but also the size of the house and the layout of the house. So if you want to give him a new house, you have to give him something similar. And that concludes the parak of Hashoel. If a guy accepts to work somebody else's field, there are two main ways to do this. You can do this as a sharecropper, pay a fixed percentage of the crop, or you could do this as a chaycher. The chaycher pays a flat fee. Okay, so now there are different customs in planting the field. In a place where the sharecropper is responsible for cutting the grain, so then Yitzhar, he has to cut the grain. Lakar, to uproot the weeds, so then Yakar, he has to uproot them. Lakrosh akrov yakrosh. Some places had a custom, instead of uprooting the weeds, as soon as they'd harvest, they'd plow the field again. And the purpose of that was to sort of get rid of the weeds. So if that's the normal thing in that town, then that's what they have to do. I call committing a medina, whatever is the normal custom. Just like the sharecropper gets to split the grain that grows, he also gets to split the hay. Just like if they have a vineyard, they split the grapes and wine. They split the branches, and also they split the konim. The konim over here, the Gemara explains, refers to these supports for the vines. So every year they have to build some sort of support that the vine should be able to hang on. So the expense for that support is split between the sharecropper and the owner in the regular proportion. Okay, they're both they're both obligated to rebuild. So they both get to keep the leftover support, and they both are obligated to build the support at the beginning of the when the grapes start growing. Tana we learned a place where they have a custom to cut. You are not permitted to uproot. Lakar, to uproot, and if this field is harvested by cutting, then you can't uproot the stuff that's growing. If the custom is to uproot it, then you can't cut it. And they both can argue with each other. Meaning either one can prevent the other one from changing from the custom. So let's explain. Liktzer, to cut, or you can't uproot. Hi Amar, the owner says, the titvin li aroi. 1 second. Yeah. The owner says, I want you to cut it, because if you uproot it, there'll be nothing left behind. If you cut it, so what's left behind will be like a compost, and it'll be good for the property. The Hi Amar Lemetzina, the worker says it's too labor intensive to 1 second. Meaning, okay, so the landlord prefers cutting because he has the advantage of having the leftover stuff in his field, which would fertilize it. The farmer, the sharecropper, he also would prefer cutting because he doesn't have to work as hard. So that would be another reason why he would want to prevent the landlord from requiring him to uproot. If the custom is to cut, he plans on cutting because it's easier. Similarly, lakar and if the custom is to uproot, then they can't cut. Either one could prevent this. Why? The owner says, I want my property to be clean, to be able to start fresh next year and not have anything on the ground. And the farmer could say, tifna. I want to uproot it because this way I get a larger stalk to feed my animals. So the Gemara says, one second. Okay. If the Mishnah says you can't change, then obviously either one can prevent the change from happening. So why does the Mishnah effectively need to repeat itself? So the Gemara explains, matam kamar. Matam liktzer and rishar lakar and rishar liktzer. Mishnum d'shnei makvina says that the reason why you can't switch from the custom is specifically because each one can stop the other one from making the change. In other words, for both the farmer and the owner, there's advantages to both cutting and uprooting, and therefore they both have to go with the normal custom unless they specified otherwise, because it isn't fair for either one, and that's the reason why nobody's allowed to change. Okay, lakrish akrav yakrish. If the custom is to plow the field after it's already been harvested, then yakrish you have to do it. Sometimes it's pshita. Obviously, if that's the custom, you have to do it. We're talking about a town where they plow the field after the harvest, which typically when they do that, they don't weed the field. This guy went ahead and weeded the field anyway. I would think the farmer sharecropper can say, I weeded the field so that I don't have to plow it. Kamash Malan, that if that was the agreement, you should have explained it. The fact that you didn't explain it, it's very nice that it isn't as necessary to plow a field that has already been weeded after, plow it after it's harvested if it's already been weeded, but because he didn't specify it, they have to follow the custom of the town and he has to plow the field. Hakol Kaminig Medina, everything is like the custom of the town. Hakol Asuyimai, what's that coming? What's Hakol? What's the additional? What's that coming to include? So Gemara says it's coming to include. This is the rabbis taught. Mokom shenagu lahaskir ilanos agabe karga maskirin. Mokom shenagu lahaskir e maskirin. Okay, what does that mean? If they have, so you have these fields of vegetables, and at the edge of the field there are fruit trees. So there was a custom in some places. Now, let me just explain. Obviously, a vegetable patch, a vegetable garden or field requires more effort because everything is an annual. It has to be, all the labor starts again every single year. On the other hand, a fruit tree, you don't really do much for it. It typically grows on its own. Maybe you put a little bit of water, but not much. So now the question is, basically, there was a custom sometime in some places that if there was a fruit tree next to the property, the sharecropper would be allowed to take from the fruit tree, even though he sort of didn't really work for it. So that's the custom. Then he gets to take. If the custom is that he doesn't get to take, then he doesn't get to take. Pshita, obviously, why would I think this is different? Somewhere says, okay, typically the landlord would take the third. This landlord only took a quarter. The landlord could tell the sharecropper, the reason why I took less, I have given you more. On condition that you don't take from the tree. So I'll get the full tree. You won't be able to take from the tree. the chiddush of the Mishnah is that if that was the case, you should have specified it specifically. The fact that you changed the custom, didn't specify it, means that we don't take the change significantly. In a place where you don't eat from the tree, you don't then you don't get to eat from the tree. Pshita, this is the reverse. Typically, the landlord gets a quarter. This landlord took a third. So the farmer argues the reason why why I allowed you to take a larger payment is because I expected that you could give me from the fruit tree, and therefore the point the Brisa was making is that no, it would have had to be specified. Just like they split with the grain, they split with the stalks and the bran. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, in Bavel, the custom is that the tevin, the stalks are not given, the hay is not given to the sharecropper. What difference does it make? If somebody gives a sharecropper stalks or hay, he's a very nice guy, but it doesn't change the fact that the custom of town is that you do not need to give this. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, okay, 1 second. Okay. Buchra v'tifsa v'akafta v'kani d'chizra d'balabayas. Okay. This is the basic security of the field. How do you keep the field secure? So you sort of dig a ditch, and you put earth at the edge of the ditch, the edge of the ditch. Okay, so basically you dig it. It's like a long trench around the property, and then adjacent to the trench is a pile, and then into the pile you drive these large sticks, and you hang thorns from it. It's like seems like an old version of barbed wire or something. Okay, so these and this is done the mound of earth is typically done 3 times. The first time is called buchor, the second time is called tifsa, and the third time is called rakafta. Cutting the chizra, these are the stakes that are driven in that will eventually carry the thorns. So all those things are the obligation of the balabayas of the owner. The chizra gufei and the thorns themselves da'arisa. It's the obligation of the sharecropper. Klal de Milsa, the general rule is Iker Blama de Balabayas. The basic requirement for security of the field is the obligation of the owner. The Tirusi Aserta, but anything extra is Darisa, is the sharecropper. So presumably the sort of mound of earth with the sticks in it would be sufficient as basic security. The fact that you hang thorns, that's extra security, and that's why the sharecropper would be responsible for that. Amar Rav Yosef says, Mor uzvila v'davla v'zarnuka. So mor is like a shovel. What's when they translate zvila? Davla is a bucket, and zarnuka is I'm sorry, davla is a pail. Zarnuka is like a drum, a larger measurement. They translate zvilo.
A hoe.
A hoe. Okay. 1 second. Okay. Yeah, a hoe. So you need a hoe to dig the field, to plow the field, so that all these instruments, these tools, are all the balabayas. They're all the responsibility of the owner. Arisa ovid yu'uri. If there's a need for a canal to channel the water from the river, that's the responsibility of the sharecropper. Just like they split wine, they also split the vines and the stakes. So says, what are we referring to with the stakes? The stakes that are used to suspend the vines at the end of the year, those stakes are split between the owner and the sharecropper. And they both have to provide these stakes. Why does the mission need to specify this? So Gemara explains, meaning the reason why they split the stakes at the end of the year is because at the beginning of the year, they both jointly provided those stakes. Because they both had to participate in getting the support to lift up the vines, to keep the vines suspended. Therefore, at the end of the year, they both can split it equally. Okay, stop here. Have a great day.